One of the things that is fascinating is how modern journalists, they're not curious about topics at all, ideas. All they are interested in is the narrative or pointing and shrieking at something that goes against the narrative. And they don't explain why the bad thing is bad. They just grasp their pearls and, oh no, it's evil. And here's an example. Elon Musk suggests support for replacing democracy with government of high status males. Well, what Elon Musk did is a guy took a screenshot from an old 4chan post. So, 4chan, they talk about ideas. And Elon Musk has said, interesting observation. That's all he said. He didn't say he necessarily supports it, just interesting observation. And this had to do with that Robert Reich. Robert Reich is that little Jewish hobbit. I think he used to be a labor secretary under Clinton, unless I'm mistaken. But he's been running around demanding that we eliminate the Constitution, that we shut down free speech, the usual thing you would suspect. I mean, some people, I'm just saying, aren't compatible with the Republic. Robert Reich is not compatible with the Republic. He needs to go off. I don't know, where do hobbits go? To the Shire or to Israel or wherever they go. That's where he needs to go. But so this is what Elon Musk was talking about. And here's the post that got their panties in the wad, the Independent. People who can't defend themselves physically, women and low-T men, parse information through a consensus filter as a safety mechanism. They literally do not ask, is this true? They ask, will others be okay with me thinking this is true? This makes them very malleable to brute force manufacture consensus. All right, and the post goes on, and it's an interesting theory, and I personally believe the theory is correct. This is why women in general, they tend to follow the strong horse. So whatever the regime supports, women typically, there's going to be exceptions, they're going to follow along with what everyone else does. And this is just not in politics, but this is why the fashion industry is mostly targeted towards women, because women, they're concerned to try to do what every other woman does. So if if the celebrities get a tattoo to show that, oh, I'm independent, then all the women, oh, I'm independent too. I got to get a tattoo like everyone else. So they just follow along. That's how women do. The hairstyle change, they all follow along. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's just the nature of women. And part of the reason for that, at least the theory, is evolutionary. In like caveman days, women better go along with the tribe because they're physically weaker than men. And if they don't adapt, they're going to be eliminated. So women, they tend to build consensus. They don't really like direct confrontation. They like to go with whatever the status quo is. That's why you see women, if they're not married, they tend to be very left-wing in America. But then when they get married, they move to the right. Why is that? Well, because women, if they're not married to a man, they're married to the state, and they want to do whatever the de facto power is. And in the United States, when it comes to, let's say, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, child sex changes, you go down the line, abortion, the regime holds a specific position. And when I mean regime, I'm just not talking about the presidency. I'm talking about the mainstream media. I'm talking about Hollywood. I'm talking about the educational system. They all share a common consensus, and women want to follow along with the consensus. That's why they tend to be left-wing, because literally everyone else is doing it. It's not like they sit down and really think out these subjects like, oh, is this really true? They don't really think in terms, is this true or false? They think in terms of, what does a tribe think? I want to go along with whatever the majority is thinking. That's why I've always said, I'm just saying this is a hypothetical, you could take the most left-wing, refugee, welcome women with their LGBTQ flags, and hypothetically, let's say if the Nazis took over, they won't because they don't exist, but let's say they did, right? There's a time machine. These same women that are having all these shit-lib woke positions, within a year they'd be following Nazism. Guaranteed, because they just go along with whatever is popular. And this guy put together, and this is a theory of why that happens. We see this happens. And you see this even with men in general. Men that tend to be very timid and weak, they tend to follow whatever the consensus is. So this is an interesting theory, and it makes a lot of sense. But the interesting part is with the independent, ironically, that name, they don't think independently. Their whole point was just to say, ooh, isn't this scary what this guy said? And ooh, isn't it scary that Elon Musk seems to agree with it? He said, interesting observation. Oh, this is toxic. This is racist, homophobic, sexist. That's all they can say. And all they're really saying, it'd be like in the Middle Ages saying, oh, that's heresy. That's heresy. That's all they're saying. You know, so they're not refuting it. They're not like getting into it, saying, oh, this is nonsense. The reason that women tend to be more left-wing than men is totally different reasons. They could explain it. They don't do that. They just point and shriek. And this is all the left pretty much does, I've determined. For the most part, it's hard to debate a leftist because they don't know how to debate. They just start to scream and shout out names and cry out in pain and horror because it literally, I think, causes them pain because they want to be safe within their little cocoon. And the idea that other people may not think that way poses a threat to them. So I think they really are scared of divergent ideas. They don't want anyone to have a different idea because it actually physically frightens them. Whereas like most of us, we find different ideas interesting and we talk about it and people, intellectual discussions. But these people, they're frightened of that. They just want to know what to think. They don't care about truth or falsehood. They want to know what everyone else thinks so they can be happy in their little cocoon. And I agree with the guy. And if Elon Musk thinks these people shouldn't vote, 100% they should not vote. This is why they should not vote, because they really act more like sheep than independent, no pun intended with the independent newspaper. They don't think independently, and this is dangerous. Talk to you guys later.